Hey guys, so today I'm going to finally be getting around to that question and answer video that I promised. Now, I actually already did record this, it's just I wasn't really happy with the quality of it. So, I decided to redo it, and I finally got around to it again. So, before I get started here, I just want to shout out to this dude's 66-year-old mom who supposedly watches my videos and plays the game. I know my mom doesn't do that, so kudos to her. Another thing, I today went on Reddit today and saw a post about me. I just want to remind you that I have absolutely no bearing on anything Gumi does, and Gumi doesn't give a rat's ass about me because I just say what I think, and I really don't give a shit what they think about what I say. I mean, if I think something's good, I'll say it's good. If I think it's bad, I'll say it's bad. I do not plug Gumi for the sake of Gumi. I play the game, and I give my opinion on the game. So there is that. And even if I did, maybe perhaps next time you'll think twice before listening to a guy whose name literally translates to evil. Moving on then. So, we'll start with the first question and go down. Now, I will not necessarily be answering every single question on this list, as some of them I have answered so many times it hurts. So, before we get started, once again, for the 100th time, I am a packed player. I get the monthly packs. That's all I do. Every once in a while, I'll go like 600 yen above it, which translates to less than $6. But yeah, I am essentially a packed player through and through. I do not whale gems at all. I know I have a couple of units that are considered whale, and that is because of A, either smart spending or B, sacking, and very little in between. So, moving on to the first question. I got a couple questions about what I think about Tsubaki's tier list, so I'm just going to answer all of these in one fell swoop. For those of you who do not know, I am a moderator in the Global Alchemist Code Discord in the Watatsumi section, which is the Japan section. Tsubaki is my sub mod, and he actually shoots his tier list by me before he publishes it. And outside of like a half tier placement on a couple units, nothing in particular, just the way Tsubaki's tier list is set up, each row encompasses multiple tiers because it's really hard to pick apart like, well, this unit's slightly better than this unit. They're all generally about the same. So other than like about a half a tier where I think some units might be placed like up one or down one, I really don't disagree much with what he has to put up there. So yeah, I actually am one of the guys who looks over his tier list before he publishes it. So keep that in mind. If I have a disagreement about one of Tsubaki's placements, he hears about it before you guys see it. So, that is that. The next question is about my shard farming habits. How often do I farm shards? Or rather, how many shards do I farm? And where do I feel like it's okay to leave units at? And, I'm not going to really go into what units are a must for global players, as at this point you guys should already have a firm understanding of where you want to take your teams, as your Kaigen has been around for a while. However, I basically farm as much as I can. If the AP that I have each day is not spent on an event, it's spent on farming hard quests. It's that simple. This is the fastest way to progress in the game, is to farm as many units as you possibly can without going into the negative. Sometimes I will lay back on how many hard quests I'm farming if there's a ton of events going on that I want to finish really quickly. For maybe perhaps I'm not going to have time to do it later in the week. But other than that, for the most part, I farm as many hard quests as I can per day. And yeah, and once I finished farming up to 190 shards, I'll go back and start farming for Gate 7 once I'm done with all my Gate 5s. That's just how it kind of is. This is extremely important if you are not a whale, as getting new units in Japan these days is damn near impossible. So moving on to the next one. The inspiration skills on weapons, or we also call it weapon kaigen sometimes. What are the materials that you need for it, and how does it work? Well, functionally, if a weapon is capable of getting its inspiration skill, and it is level 30, and it must be level 30, it will turn blue. Some of you asked about that. The blue border around the weapons means you can get a weapon skill on it from the inspiration skills. and it will just randomly proc one of multiple different base abilities, and then you can proc it again to get another subset of that base ability, and then you have to go and kill or hurt or attack or buff yourself on a certain specific unit of a certain element of a certain level. You can look these up in the database in order to get the third proc off in order to get the final level of the skill. If you do not like the skill that you got, you can spend Zenny and reset the skill to 0, or just down one tier, actually, is the way it works. And then you can try again. This is all RNG, and it is a bitch to do. I hate farming these things. It's a real pain in the ass. At least intentionally farming them. If you luck yourself into them, it's nice, but intentionally farming them is a real pain. The way you upgrade the skills is by getting multiple of the same skill and then feeding the weapon into the weapon that you want to upgrade the skill on. The weapon does not need to be the same unless it is a VCR weapon. And the reason I say VCR weapon is on most of the VCR weapons, there is a ability that is unique to the unit who uses that VCR weapon. For instance, Mocha's Spear has a weapon ability that is exclusive to Mocha. There is a generalized version of it that everyone can use. However, if you want to upgrade the skill for Mocha, you need multiple Mocha Spears to do it, which is such a pain in the ass. However, it is possible for these skills to level up on their own, and I've seen it happen to me once, although it is incredibly rare. It's probably easier just to get another VCR. So as far as stuff that you want to save up in order to effectively be able to get the inspiration skills, save up all of those 2-star weapons that you can. You don't necessarily have to keep them like at their base 2-star value. The best thing you can do is just 5-star every single one that you can, and max it out to level 30. So yeah, that's really all there is to that. Someone asked me about the video on Blanchette I said I'd do some time ago, so Blanchette is so kind of just far out of the meta, I really don't plan to do her at this point unless she gets some serious reworks, which is unlikely to happen. So I got a question: is why does Gumi release unlimited banners every week? Gumi be Gumi. They want to make that cash, and yeah, banners are bad. We've already been over this, so you can see my other videos bitching about this. How much time do I invest into the game? Well, that kind of depends on what I'm doing and how into the game I am. When I'm at my lows, I might spend at most an hour, and I'll basically just skip ticket all the hard quests and do all the stuff that I have to auto, like the VCR stages each day, and then I'm just going to call it quits for the day. If there's a lot that I'm doing, I could spend anywhere up to 6 or 7 hours. Like if I'm like really grinding at Neo Vita, like a really hard quest, or one of the hell stages, I'll spend hours playing. But otherwise, I probably max out at about like 2 hours of effective playing per day. Like on a busy day. On not busy days, it's normally just about an hour. One second, I have a couple of questions in a row that I've kind of just already gone over. So, someone has asked me, and I actually think this has come up a couple times, about Nensous that are mandatory for each element or region. As of right now, the only like super important ones are the max limit break ones for the Nensou leader skill in Japan. And of those, I think so far the ones that have been used the most are Zane's, the ones that you just got, and Setsuna's original Nensou. Those both have really good Nensou leader skills on them, and I've had Sin tags that have been very useful, at least in the Kasumi event. I don't know if that'll be the case going forward, however, and we're unsure if Global will get the Kasumi event or not. So take that with a grain of salt. Please don't go around saying that I recommended this to you. This is just what happened in Japan. It is not necessarily what's going to happen in Global. Just keep an eye out for good Nensou leader skills. One of the main reasons Setsuna's is so good is because it's extremely offensively... It's very offensive. It has a bunch of slash and physical attack damage on it, which allows you to do a ton of extra damage with a rainbow team that's based around slash units. When did Japan get the shards selecting for limit breaking? And I already went over gear enlightenment. And And am I excited for the new Final Fantasy series Gumi is making? Well, I just made a video on the Final Fantasy series, so no. In fact, I absolutely despise the fact that they're making it and the fact that they haven't fixed the original game, that the game is basically copying. The Final Fantasy is just a reskin of Tagatame, and that's just all it is. They're going to basically try to milk us a second time, and I'm having none of that. As for when the Japan got the shard selecting, I do not remember exactly when that was, but remember that quality of life adjustments are drastically different for global than they are for Japan. More often than not, global gets quality of life things much earlier than Japan did, as they are, I assume, easier to port over to the global version of the game. But in other cases, quality of life things for some odd reason just get stalled or like never end up coming to global, even though they've been in Japan for a long ass time. So it's impossible to say when global's gonna get that. Um. So the next one's asking about the Alma memento, but I'm just going to include the Dawn memento and the Moko memento because these are all basically the same ilk. They are the same breed of type of Nensou or unit in Japan. Their banners are pretty freaking rare, to be honest. Outside of just generalized limited banners that just have all of the limited Nensous on it, I've only seen one or two banners outside of the original ones that have had Alma, Dawn, and Mocha on them. The reason that I have like 6 Dawn Nensous is because for some odd reason he's like haunting me, and I hate it. Um, I can actually max limit break his Nensou now. It's disgusting. Do I have any personal suggestions for the future of both the server of this game and asking me about Japan first? But really, here's the thing about Japan and global. These games are currently unsustainable in the way that they are, in that Gate 5 is too high of a bar for new players and new units. The reason it's too high of a bar for new players is if you farm it from scratch, it's going to take you the better part of a year to be able to use your units to their maximum capabilities. Remember that new players are not going to really have any access to soul coins, and with summons the way they are these days, you can't even get your 3 stars up to try to get soul coins off of those to try to buff up your ability to max limit break and then later Kaigen your just standard units, let alone your limited units. One way that they can solve this issue is by either taking away the original max limit break and giving banners that give units at level 85 when they're new, possibly. This would take away a large number of shards and make it at least easier for new players to enter the game, or they could just let us use elemental shards for Kaigens, which would effectively let us bypass having to farm these EX hard quests. Don't forget that these would still be limited resources, so it's not like you'd be able to Kaigen every single like super unit that you wanted that's super limited. But they would have to do that without gimping further access to these shards, because if they did that, there'd be no point. As it stands right now, though, it's too time intensive. Like, there's no point in getting a new unit if you're not going to be able to use it for a year. And without fixing this problem, both games are doomed to fail either way. What's next? And next question is on my favorite units in each element. Maybe I'll do that later in the video, but I'm not going to go to it quite right now. I already went over resources for Weapon Kaigen. Will the MCs be usable with their third jobs? Yes. They will all be usable. Will they be good or great? That's up for question. However, they will be usable from now on, because the third job has fixed one of the biggest issues that they had, which was with their HP due to lack of having a third job. Like, technically speaking, wow, I can't even remember his name for some reason because it's been so long since Kamui, that's his name, Kamui. So Kamui is the main character for the 5th chapter, and he has access to Holy Brawler and a specialized Magic Fist class. And while he actually was pretty decent on release, like his damage was okay, especially for a main character, his HP just fell way too short to use his kit. And that was because he didn't have a third job. And since this issue is now fixed, you've already seen my MC J3 on Liz, I assume. She is quite competent now compared to what she was. I do think they will all be usable. Unless Logi doesn't get more speed. If Logi's still stuck at like 110 speed or whatever he's at, then he's screwed. Is completing Chapter 5 story quest better way to level up your account than doing the normal story? Just do the entire story. You have to do it anyways. As for my raid teams and strats in general, global strats are a little bit different as you have access to a couple of different units that are effective in your raiding strats, as well as Kaigens for the Attack on Titan units that make them more viable. So my raiding strats are going to be different than yours. Also, you have to remember that the timing method that you're in a map is different for global than it is in Japan. So it's impossible for me to give you a good Japan raiding strat that will successfully go over to global 100% of the time. The next question is about Collab unit shards. In general, they're not really farmable like they are in the Attack on Titan Collab. The POTK units do have, or at least a little bit easier to obtain, as they do have methods to obtain them, although they're not super reliable. As for Rainbow Kaigen shards in general, for collab units, we really haven't seen a ton of them recently, outside of just straight up buying them from the shop at price for 4,000 gems for 50. So it does look like they're pretty much done giving them out in banners. So screw Gumi. How many sins are you going to be getting in the future? So sins were kind of scarce all up until one point in Japan where we were leading up to the 3rd anniversary, and we suspected they were going to be dropping gate 4 and 5 soon. So at that point they just started drowning us in sins, and so we could start Kaigening all of our units. And ever since that point, I've never really run out of sins. So you can definitely expect to get more in the future, unless Global Gumi just completely screws you guys, which is always a possibility. You never know with them. Why not Kaigen Bud in Global? I'm not super up on the details on this one, but I know that they were not Kaigening him for a raid strat. That's about all I know. I suggest asking around the Discord if you want to know more, or if someone from the Discord wants to write down the reasoning in the comment section, that would be great as well. I already answered why some gears are blue, so are there any archive characters worth building? Obviously Rebecca, and that's probably about it. Is Brig worth raising for a pack player? So I did it. I'm a pack player, and I raised her. As for whether it's worth raising her, that's debatable. She is a good unit, though. If you have a method to actually get through her Kaigen, she is a good unit. She's just not... I don't know if I could actually say she's super worth raising for a pack player. There are probably better uses for your gems. Another comment here about the Sharon and Kaya swimsuits. You've already seen the result of that. Top 20 units in Japan. So, the top units in Japan are... That's just... I don't really like naming top units. Because here's the thing. Units are useful on the maps the units are useful on. And they're not useful on maps that they're not useful for. So, like, taking Sharon into every map, as much as I would love to do that, unfortunately, that's just asking for trouble, as she's just not good on every map. You know, not every unit can be a Black Killer Masamune, where for some odd reason they just do well in like almost every single circumstance you put them in. But in general, if I had to name one unit that I think is just above and beyond every other unit in the game, and I, once again, take this with a grain of salt, as this is not going to be applicable to global, this is Japan only. It's Moa after she gets her Job Plus and gets her VCR. I have basically just been killing every difficult map with Moa for like a month or two now. And it's just kind of disgusting how unkillable Moa is. I already did a video on Moa. I suggest you check it out if you don't know about it yet. She's absolutely disgusting. Not only does she do really high damage and she snowballs, it's like almost impossible to kill her too. So, yeah, there is that. Definitely Moa. There's plenty of other good units too, though, and just remember that Moa only becomes that good after her job plus. If you get her and you Kaigen her and you're like, Mal, Moa isn't that great, that's because you didn't wait for her job plus and you didn't listen to me. So keep that in mind. Is grabbing the second sin in the X shop worth trying to grind for? In my opinion, no. That's way too much time. Um, so I don't know much about Lyle. Um, However, I can't imagine he's that good, to be honest. Um, you mentioned Carla not having a 5-star Nensou, but she kind of does. Carla and Bolt share a Nensou. And no, she's not getting a swimsuit Nensou. Do you think that Shayna's going to get a job? Plus, it is definitely possible, as Shayna's like one of their OG units. Like they really like some of their older units and they try to bring them up. And now that JEs are being turned into job pluses, it's definitely possible that she'll get a job plus. But will she? Well, only time will tell. Um, and something about Japan releasing OG skins at a slower rate. Honestly, I think the rate has stayed about the same. They release like 2 per month, and it's just pretty much always been this way. And they don't use time of release or even the star number to really determine what it is. You can just assume 3 stars aren't getting theirs. What units, including collabs, had good banners? Good banners. Do you even play this game, man? I'm just kidding, but seriously, there are no good banners ever. How good is Pamela? Pamela's okay. I use her occasionally. She's not like super relevant to me, but I do have her Kaigen and I pull her out from time to time. I have no idea what wind unit Holly you're referring to though. I can't really recommend who. So the question is, who you should max, if you can't catch up in each element. And like I said, I don't know your situation. Um, all you can really do is look at what you're missing and what you have and target that. If you have any questions, I suggest like asking around on like Reddit or Discord to find out more information where you can actually post more details on what kind of box you have. Um, when will I make a rainbow team video or are they memento leader skill teams? So whenever I make a rainbow team, you can almost be assured that it is a Nensou leader skill. Every once in a while, I'll pull a unit like Rahu into an element she doesn't belong in because and this is almost exclusively for supports, by the way, as supports aren't as reliant on leader skills as your damaging units. Obviously, units that perform high damage rely on the leader skill to do more damage. However, a support unit like Rahu is good on any team as long as you can keep her alive. And we have access to raid gear that will give her additional HP if I need to obtain that without a leader skill. So, yes, I will occasionally run a rainbow team, but it's almost always a support just being in an element it doesn't belong in, just because that support is just the best unit for the job, even if they don't match the leader skill. However, this in of itself is pretty rare, as in most maps these days in Japan, if you don't have the HP off your leader skill, you might as well just be dead, and you probably will be soon. But yeah, pretty much all of my rainbow teams have been specifically designed to deal with certain maps. So it's not like I've really like developed like a rainbow team that I like to use to clear general content, if that's what you're getting at. And do I keep whaling on each video? Once again, I am a pact player. I do not necessarily whale. At best, they'll add Dark Phantom Nyx and Mara, but there will be no more Dark Phantoms after that. And Genesis units have already received their Kaigen, so Shenmei is going to be usable after her Kaigen and JE in global. However, she's getting her job plus soon in Japan most likely, so she might become really good in Japan. So how do you know what attack type will affect the skills and what your skills scale off of? So, if you don't know about it yet, the Alchemist Code database is the best place to go. There are symbols next to each attack name, and I believe it is if it has a purple cane next to it, it scales off of magic. If it has a red sword next to it, it scales off of physical attack. If it has a red sword that has a like swishing animation like the lines to make it look like it's moving, it means it's slash damage. If it looks like it's gears, it's strike damage. If it's like if it's yellow, it's missile. And if it's like a fireball and purple, it's magic modifier. Um, I suggest looking at the skills that you're using and looking at those symbols, and you'll figure it out. As for what the attacks scale off of, generally speaking, like magic attacks scale off of magic, but this is not always the case. For instance, spies have magic modifier on all of their spells on their main job. However, they scale off of physical attack. Meanwhile, magic meisters have missile attacks that do physical damage but scale off of dex and magic. So you actually have to look up in the database what your unit is using in order to see how they scale. Um, let's see here. I'm starting to run out of questions here, which means we'll be wrapping up here pretty shortly. Um, so the next question is, how often is Merlinus used over Ultima? So here's the thing, Merlinus and Ultima don't do the same thing. Merlinus is if you want to do high water magic damage. Ultima is a weapon ability slave. I use Ultima if I need to use the weapon ability, and if I need to do really high magic damage, and I need a good like HP based leader skill, I'll throw Merlinus in the mix. Um, I would say that I use Ultima more often than Merlinus because his weapon ability is just straight up broken. Um, but yeah, honestly, most of the time I use them in the same team anyways. Um, what are the best ways to obtain limited Nensous if you missed their banners in the past? So every once in a while, they will have some kind of offer for like a limited pick ticket. They're not always super expensive, but buying those is a great way if you don't mind paying a little bit. Otherwise, save up your gems. Every once in a while, they'll release a banner that's specifically designed to give you limited Nensous, in Japan at least. I don't know if these will ever come to global or not, and these are the best ways to get your limited Nensous outside of those, and it's how I've gotten the majority of mine. Let's see here. So the next question is will Global release a PC version like a Steam version? And the answer to that is absolutely not. Uh, Global is already atrophying, and it's not looking any better with each passing week. There's absolutely no way they would ever commit resources to Steam when they need to focus more on keeping the game afloat. So the next question is, will older collab units like Lahar or Edward become good after their Kaigen? And the answer to that is it depends. So the problem with old units are their kits themselves. It's not the unit, but the kit. Um, Dated kits have a really hard time competing in Japan these days. Like, if you don't have a charge up, you're really not going to be able to be useful as a damage unit. So, like, older units that don't have charge up, like, they're pretty much screwed at this point, unless they have some other niche they can bring to the table. Just in general, the dated kits, like, not having matching elements, gimps your damage. Um, Noctis is a really big one. I personally have expressed this a couple times, but I don't think Noctis is going to be super viable unless they do some really amazing things on his Kaigen. I mean, don't get me wrong. Every unit is possible to have be part of the meta if they give that unit the numbers. If Laharl did 100,000 damage, he would be the meta, but he doesn't. And he's stuck with a kit that's sort of dated and doesn't always mesh up well. So while Laharl is good, he's not great. Um, but yeah, it's mainly the kits that hold these units back, not like the Kaigens themselves. If like for instance, Noctis only has like 3 casts on his Blizzaga, and he has his weapon ability, and those are just his main damage sources if you want to run him with Drain Dimension. So like how you fix him is you need to give him extra attacks off of his VCR or Nensou, and then but have the VCR do like maybe give him a charge up. You know, he needs more skill casts. He needs a better charge up in all honesty if he could, but if not, he needs other methods of getting more damage. Um, it's hard to say exactly what he'd need to become super viable. Just remember that maps are getting longer and longer in Japan, so you need additional skill casts if you want to be useful late into the fight. What else do I have? So I'm being asked about my ability to speak Japanese, and I know a little bit of Japanese. I'm not great. Reading kanji is really difficult, though. I can read all kana, though, pretty easily. Let's see here. What else do we have? Well, we're down to our last ones. Based on current content in Japan, what kind of leader skill is better, HP or physical attack? Or just, I mean, just attack in general. So, generally speaking, you're going to want a mix of attack and HP. If you can get a 50 HP leader skill to work, that's always great, as it gives you a much better margin of error. However, as the HP on the bosses gets higher and higher, I've started to value extra damage more and more and more. Also, as the base HP on units rise, I've begun to value HP more and more and more. Um, it it's just quite simple. Like, I need to kill the boss before the boss kills me, because against these bosses, you're going to lose the war of attrition. Regen armor does not heal enough, and there's not enough heals in your kit or enough jewels on the field that are easily obtainable to heal back the damage some of these bosses are doing these days. Not to mention, you have a bunch of ads that have like 20,000 HP that you gotta thin out, and they do a ton of damage too. So it's kind of a kill or be killed situation more than a survive situation these days. Alright, so I guess we'll go into some of my favorite units, and I'm basically going to be going by design on this, not necessarily the kit itself. As if I go into the kit itself, then I'd just basically be reading you like the top of the like Tsubaki's tier list. So, in Fire, I do really like Kaya's design. Both her and her original skin, her swimsuit and her original skin look really nice. And I also really like Daisy's design too. I really like Daisy. And Carla's design is probably my other favorite fire unit design. I like Kagura's New Year skin too, though. Moving on to water. Um, Itsuki is like one of my favorite water units. I've always liked her design, and I really wish she had an OG skin, because I really like her OG art. However, the Valentine skin looks super nice too, and I'm happy to use it, at least for now. Um, Klima's snow skin is definitely really adorable. However, I'm hard pressed to call her like my favorite water unit, and I rarely use her, but I really do like that skin. Shenmei, I have a really soft spot for Shenmei, and that is because back when I started in Global, this is way back in like January, about 2 weeks in the Rahu events. I started at like the January 30th or 31st, by the way. So like 2 weeks in to the game, I had at this point Shenmei was like my only like unit that I had really pulled that was like a 5-star unit, was like super usable. And Rahu's Job Plus came around, and I had to use Shenmei as my tank, and I had to pull Shane and Mercs off of the Merc screen and run with that. And I managed to farm the Job Plus using her and the Shayna Mercs. But man, it was one hell of a time. I could only kill like the first wave and a half, and I had to like not let the third wave spawn because they were thunder and they'd come over and kill Shenmei. So yeah, that was an interesting time. But I've always had a soft spot for Shenmei ever since. So I was super happy when I heard that she'd be getting a Job Plus. Other than that, I also like Lavina too. Um, and this is probably one of the unit elements that actually has a male unit I like. I've always kind of liked Ultima. I've kind of liked his attitude in the DG story. And look at that nice New Year skin right there. So in Thunder, all of you should know this by now. Sharon's one of my favorite units in the entire game. I really like her design and her skin. Look at that otter, man. Look at that otter. Love that unit. Other Thunder units I really like. I really do like Mayfawn as well. I've always liked to use her, and I still feel her in teams sometimes, even though she has kind of fallen off. And Rusha is also another one of my favorites. Once again, I do really like her art, among other things. And I think that's about it for Thunder. Moving on to Win, I've always liked Setsuna. However, I kind of gave up on her for the longest time because she just really wasn't that good or useful. But now that she has this super nice skin and a job plus, she's once again one of my favorite units. And I do like Mocha as well. And design-wise, I actually really like Tamamo. I really like Tamamo's design. I really wish Tamamo had an OG skin. It'd look really nice. And ever since I started, I actually used to use Bolt in Global back when I had him at like level 65 in Tower and stuff. So I've always had a soft spot for Bolt. I really like him, and I still do use him. Okay, in Light, so Nina is adorable in every aspect, and I really like the fact that they have gone out of their way to make her like the only viable summoner in the game, which is super cool. Suzuka is another unit that I've always liked her design. Um, Moa is once again another unit. I have a lot of light units that I like. Um, but this skin especially is super cool. Cannon was probably my carry for the longest time in Japan, so I do have a soft spot for her. She was my first like really good unit here, and I abused the hell out of her back when I got her Nensou originally. And I also am another huge fan of Tilter's design as well, both her OG skin and her Nensou skin. Although I have to say, the more and more I use it, the more and more partial I become to the Nensou skin. I actually didn't like this skin when it first came out, but the more I've looked at it, the more it's just kind of grown on me. And for Dark, well, obviously Brig is the best Dark unit. Maybe not like best stat wise or damage wise, but she's obviously the best. But putting that aside from the moment, I have become very, very. I really like Ambrosia's design. I mean, just look at that attitude, man. Look at that attitude. Ambrosia's definitely now up there with Brig as one of my favorite dark units, although I still think I do like Brig's design more. Um, as for other dark units, I've always liked Albea. I remember trying to get Albea when she first came to Global, and I didn't get her for the longest time. And then she never got her hard quest for the longest time, and I kind of gave up in Global. But I did farm her up in Japan, and I am ready. I actually don't. I must have gotten those shards from a shard banner. And going into units that I don't have but want, that I really like, I really, really, really like Emmer. I really wish I had her, but I don't, and I really like her design. I'm a sucker for those designs that have like all those like seal or whatever you want to call them looking things like flying around the units. They look really cool to me. And the other unit that I really, really want is Zwei. I really wish I had Zwei, but I don't. Screw Rakina. I like Rakina. I really like her design, but her banner just made me hate her. And I wish I had D Rosa. I am a fan of the Disgaea series, in case anyone didn't know. So when Rosa got the succubus form, I really wish I had managed to get her, but I did not manage to pull her. And when the last rerun where she was available, the banners were atrocious. I also wish I got Ott. This is because I played Radiant Historia, and Ott was like my hard carry in that game with all of her elemental traps. Anyone who's played Radiant Historia knows exactly what I'm talking about, and anyone who hasn't has no freaking clue. But I always did like Ott because of that. I wish I got her, but I didn't. Once again, Dancer Shenmei. I already explained why I like Shenmei. This is just Shenmei in gimpier clothes who does a nice dance. It's awesome, man. Rider Yomi is completely dead, but I have her in global, so I don't really miss her that much. Unfortunately, she just doesn't have the stats these days to keep up. And that pretty much wraps up the units. I wouldn't mind getting stock. I'm not like super like hyped for him, but I wouldn't mind getting him. But yeah, I think that pretty much wraps up the units that I don't have that I want. There are definitely a couple of units from the POTK that I would love to see come over to Global. Muramasa, specifically her Lost Ragnarok version, is really, really cool looking, and I really wish that she was a unit in Takatame, but she isn't. Um, some of the other ancient killers, specifically Hercule, I really do like her design as well. And yeah, so that pretty much wraps up that. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. I'm sure this one was stupidly long, but I had a lot to go over. A lot of you asked questions. Thank you very much for asking the questions. Um, it was fun to do this video, and I apologize it took me a while to get it out. Like I said, I really was not happy with the quality of my first take on this one, and it took me a while to get back to it, as I have to set aside a lot of time in order to make a video like this, as it's so freaking long. So thanks for watching, everyone, and I hope to see you next time.